Hello, this is just a brief introduction to put online distributed resolution in an historic context. History is of course not that long, since internet use is only about 20 years old, and some predecessors of current successful online distributed resolution programs started offline. The main example here is Smart Saddle, a very sophisticated software program that helps people reach solutions even beyond win-win, so better than they could do on their sales by negotiation. It's because this program uses game theory. This program is still for a large part used offline, but it's very suited to resolve conflicts also online. So there are several examples, apart from Smart Saddle, of programs that started in the offline environment. Online, the first dispute resolution was of an informal nature and used to resolve conflicts that arise in news groups between people posting messages. And there's a very classic example of someone who was accused of using voodoo power, Mr. Bungie, and he was thrown out of the online environment by his peers. It was of course a severe sanction. A very early example of online dispute resolution by peers is not as famous as the Mr. Bungie example. It's the Internet Tribunal initiated by I believe it was a Danish law professor, and he wanted to have about 100 to 200 people specialized in conflict resolution for what he called an internet tribunal, and let those people decide cases that arise online. But it never really took off, and there's only a very scarce reference to this initiative in the literature. The examples that are often referred to from the early days are the virtual magistrate project, an arbitration project, where the conflicts that could be filed in the system were not restricted to a particular domain, so any conflict could be filed. You might expect, because of this wide range, that a lot of conflicts were filed, but actually in the end, only after 2 or 3 years, only one conflict was decided. It was a conflict on spam between American Online and an individual, I believe, and actually never was decided by the virtual magistrate because they reach an amicable solution before the virtual magistrate could decide this case. Another early example, also from American University, is the Online Ombuds Office, and there was one particular project of this Online Ombuds Office by Ethan Ketch, Janet Rifkin, and Ellen Geidenby, where they had for about 2 or 3 weeks a platform to resolve eBay conflicts, and they explicitly indicated that this platform was only meant to resolve eBay conflict, but still it appeared that several people wanted to file a divorce or insurance issue or whatever, although it was indicated that it was only meant for eBay dispute. What was special about this project, they mediated between 200 and 300 cases, I believe. But what was special was the spin-off of this project, which was a very well-known online dispute resolution company, SquareTrade, that resolved millions and millions of eBay disputes. They ended the service, SquareTrade, after almost 10 years of being active for eBay in 2009, I believe, and now eBay is doing resolution of conflicts at least for the .com domain. Not all national domains of eBay have conflict resolution. For the .com domain, they do the dispute resolution by their own dispute resolution center led by Colin Rule. And they resolve, as I already mentioned in the introduction, over 50 million disputes on a yearly basis. In 1990, after those research projects, the online ombuds of the Federal Magistrate, in 1990, 2000, it was common practice that any e-commerce service was funded by people or banks that were willing to pay for the service. They didn't have to have a very clear scheme of where they would generate income from, so a lot of online dispute resolution providers appeared, but partly due to the internet bubble that bursted, a lot of them also disappeared. And there's a famous paper by Conley Tyler and Bredesen, I believe, at least by Conley Tyler. It's called 77 and Still Counting. It was repeated in, I believe, 2004 or 5 again, and then called something like 100 plus and still counting. It was an overview of the existing online dispute resolution providers, but it was a very uncertain business because many new players appeared on the market, but also many disappeared. One initiative from the European Union around the same time, 2003, 2004, is ODR, particularly focused on e-commerce disputes between businesses and consumers, and they settled about 30 or 40 cases, but their main problem was the language problem, because they wanted to resolve disputes in any language of the European Union and also in any combination of languages, so conflict between a Polish and a Danish consumer and business then should be resolved by someone who is capable of talking both Danish and Polish. That was very difficult to accomplish, because you need hundreds and hundreds of mediators that are able to address both languages. So the human factor is always problematic in online dispute resolution. You have to pay for people, it costs people time. So a very good solution is if you can use technology only to resolve disputes. Then you talk about online negotiation. And a recent example that I will show later on in this class is from a Dutch company called JuryPax that wants to specialize itself in multilingual disputes, and they do it at least first phase of the dispute in a solely automated way. So there are no people involved. I already mentioned SquareTrade, a very successful provider. Other provider is often referred to in the literature as CyberSettle. I will also show it later on, and this is an example of a so-called blind bidding system, where two parties are asked to enter the money they are wanting to receive for a dispute or are willing to pay, basically used in insurance conflicts. Well, one of my students sent me a link a couple of weeks ago that web lectures are in fact better for educating people than physical lectures. I'm really curious whether this also applies to me. I bet it doesn't, but still it's a nice experiment, and I'm curious how you have experienced it. We were talking about CyberSettle. An interesting thing to mention is that they have a patent for their blind bidding system, that they used it to move some other players out of the market, and they were successful by quite some providers of the services, except for those who knew that the patent wasn't that good, that they could use it against them, and one of those people were Graham Ross from Online Mediation, who just remained offering his service. It's more sophisticated and offers more than only blind bidding, but also has a blind bidding element in his system. I will also introduce his system in during this class. So we have discussed three successful online dispute resolution services: CyberSettle, WIPO, or the domain name arbitration, and the eBay resolution of eBay disputes. And the online arbitration are resolution of those domain names by online arbitration are a good example of a development in online dispute resolution that you can see happening during the last couple of years, and that's that more and more national providers, and it's a bit similar as in e-commerce general, that consumers aren't willing to buy cross-border. You see that online dispute resolution services are offered locally. You have Camera Arbitrali in Italy, already in use for quite some years now. You have jury packs in the Netherlands, already mentioned them before. You have in domain name arbitration many local service providers. You also have the EU domain name arbitration center in the former Czech Republic, or it is still the Czech Republic. Another example of a very complicated process because of the multilingual processes. If I have filed a domain name in Greek, for instance, a Greek domain name, and the trademark holder or someone else who believes he has a right in this domain name wants to file a case, I have to do the process in Greek. Of course, or maybe not of course, but I'm not that good in Greek, so it will be very difficult for me to do this process. There are some exceptions, but the basic rule is that the dispute resolution process is in the language where you filed your domain name. So that's in the European Union, of course, quite problematic. So language is one of those aspects. We all talk English, or we pretend we do. Conflicts, it's very important if you are allowed to use your native language, because the meaning of words and what you say can make a big difference, and can even be the difference between resolution of conflict and not resolving a conflict. So these are the developments that appeared over the last couple of years. The other was already mentioned during the types of ODR topic, and that's the judiciary moving more and more online. And in general, as you also will learn from the examples I will show later on in this class, you will recognize that there's big potential for online dispute resolution to get more disputes resolved. In particular, if you think of the many internet conflicts that arise, liability of intermediaries on the internet, social networking sites where there's a lot of conflict, or people not being happy by how other people are addressing them, or other people are using their pictures, etc. So there are a lot. Wikipedia is of course a very good example of a platform that has a sort of internal dispute resolution mechanism. But the social media are another source of conflicts that can well be dealt with online dispute resolution software. Can, and of course cannot do with online dispute resolution.